we go.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Pikes Peak Small Business Development Center's Business Builder Series. My name is Brandon Eldridge, and I have the privilege to serve as the executive director of this office. So, for those of you who may not be aware of us, we provide no cost one-on-one business advising and access to specialized expertise like a webinar like today. We help businesses throughout their journey from launch, growing, and thriving. In addition to advising, we host programs and workshops throughout the year, including this Business Builder series. We meet every Wednesday at noon virtually and with an intention and structure to give you pause in the middle of your week. This is a great time to set time aside to work on your business instead of constantly being pulled into it. As part of that series, we have a dedicated fourth Wednesday of each month to resiliency and culture for your small business. As you may know, Rebecca Hawkins is one of our advisors here at the SBDC, and she is somebody that you can access at no cost if you're running your business. So we hope that you'll take advantage of those services. Without further ado, Rebecca, if you want to introduce our guest and a little bit about what's going on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brandon. Glad to be here again for a monthly Wellbeing Wednesday. I'm so grateful for business owners investing in themselves and their employees, and having that trickle-down effect of greater resilience and wellness throughout our community, through the small business community. As Brandon said, I'm grateful to be able to support the small business community through the SBDC as an advisor, and would love to meet with any of you one-on-one for some support in these areas for yourself or your employees. But today, I'm super excited to introduce our guest speaker, Cass Walton, who is the Executive Director of Suicide Prevention Partnership. She brings more than 20 years of experience in the nonprofit leadership, in community engagement, in crisis intervention, and in suicide prevention. And today she's going to be sharing insights on why workplace wellness matters and how organizations can build healthier, more connected, and more supportive workplace cultures. Super important information. I'm super excited to have her. Before she kicks it off, I'd love to just have you introduce yourself, Rain, as well, and then we'll jump in. I like to hear more about the businesses in the room.
Hi, my name is Rain, and I am starting a medical health records and information organizational services that helps people manage their care so that way they can focus on it better as opposed to all the paperwork and logistics with medical care.
Love that. And you're in Boulder right now, right?
Yes, I am in
Yeah.
Boulder.
Nice. Glad you're joining us.
Thank you.
All right, I'll turn it over to Cass.
Great. I'm happy to be here. I just have kind of a short presentation on just a slightly different take on workplace wellness than we've heard about it talked in the past, just because I think right now, especially when we think about costs and all of those things, when we hear workplace wellness, a lot of times we're worried about like, what is that going to cost me? And so part of talking about workplace wellness is one, identifying things that you're already doing that fit within workplace wellness, and things that would just be easy little things to implement to be able to create some of that sense of belonging and well-being support in your organization. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so our workplace wellness strategy is titled Help Them Stay, and that's for a number of reasons. Suicide Prevention Partnership is obviously a suicide prevention organization, and so Help Them Stay very much is linked to suicide prevention. Help Them Stay is also employee retention, so that is why we decided to go with that for our workplace well-being strategies. Sorry, I can't see my screen bottom, so I didn't know how to change my slide. So a little bit about Suicide Prevention Partnership. We're a nonprofit here in Colorado Springs, and we provide basic services to support suicide prevention in our community. Within the past few years, the community really started focusing on workplace wellness. And part of that is because as we review suicide data in our community, one of the things that we know is a risk factor for suicide is financial stress. And financial stress is often very much linked with what's happening at work, having employment, and maintaining employment. And a lot of times the other things that are becoming risk factors for suicide are just different types of relationship stressors. And what we have learned is that oftentimes that's with the workplace or with the supervisor or someone at work, because we end up spending so much time with the people that we work with. And so what we know is that today's workforce is different than workforce individuals that we have worked in the past. I think it is very uncommon during, my early entry into the workforce many years ago. It was really one of those things where people would enter the workforce and really be working for their workplace home. It would be a normal thing to be with the same employer for even decades at a time. And now as an employer, as you're reviewing resumes and applications, you're noticing that there is a change in that. And what we know is that if we can prioritize workplace wellness and create a sense of belonging, if we can create a sense of, this employer cares about me as a human, that we're more likely to retain our employees, that we're more likely to see improved performance and consistent performance, which ultimately helps us with our bottom line as employers and creates and supports a healthier community, because a well community is a healthy community, and well workers are part of our community and community members. So one of the things that I always like to just remind folks is that employees who feel a strong sense of belonging are 5 times more likely to stay. And so I have really experienced this in the nonprofit world, because nonprofits, especially right now, are not really where you go to become really wealthy. If you're doing nonprofit work, usually it's because you feel really passionate about something. And so often we're asked to maintain workforces with, not the highest wage that's available. And so as nonprofit organizations, we're constantly thinking about, well, how do we get folks to stay then? Because we know there's a lot of cost in retraining. We know there's a lot of cost in recruiting. And so part of what there are many nonprofits and smaller organizations that are doing is figuring out how to help that employee, meeting that human side of them and helping them to belong to something and feel a sense of community at work. And that makes a huge difference for someone's sense of well-being. And if their workplace is a place that's feeding into that for them, they're going to be more likely to stay in their place of employment. So the strategy that we use and talk about at Suicide Prevention Partnership is really simple. It's called Get Basic, and BASIC is an acronym for biological needs, awareness and signals, inquiring, which is just communication, and culture. So when we think about biological needs, like, are you meeting the basic biological needs of your team? Do they have a place to use the restroom? Is the workplace comfortable? Do they feel safe there? Just an effective place to work. And I've really experienced this myself in the past year, because our organization had to downsize after losing some federal funding granting last year. And so my office space, part of it is rented out now as part of our strategy for sustainability. And so I had to move my workspace into like the corner of a common area in our main area of our office. And I realized I hate this. And so we had to go out of our way to figure out how to create a workspace that felt good for me and the remaining team to feel like we could be productive and like it's a space that we, don't mind coming to. Other small things that you can do, talk about supportive schedules. A lot of places offer hybrid workplace situations now, or in supportive scheduling, they offer, what are different ways where you can meet your appointments, because for some reason, I've always thought this is really weird, but all of us hold the same business hours. Everyone, every organization. And so it's like, if you have an appointment somewhere, it's during business hours. I don't know why we haven't altered that across the years as we have tried to talk about like how to make functioning communities, but probably if you have a doctor's appointment or something like that, it's going to be during the workday. So figuring out different ways and just acknowledging that life happens and not making it scary for employees to have to talk about what's happening in their life or have to fear for their employment if life happens. And then basic like human supplies. Is there toilet paper in your office? Is there replacement toilet paper? Is there a place for water? Are there snacks? If you don't provide snacks, I know not everybody can do that. Is there a place to keep your own snacks? Is there a place to put my lunch if I want to bring my lunch? Is there a place to microwave my lunch? Just really basic things. And some of those things are so basic that we forget that those are things that most of us are already doing to support workplace wellness. But part of it is highlighting it. How are you framing it? How is that set up in your environment? And is it set up in a way that communicates care and support? If it's like the microwave that nobody knows about because it's in the weirdest spot, you're not highlighting your workplace wellness enough. You need to create a little nook and figure out how to create spaces that say, hey, we care about you and we want you to be able to meet your basic needs. The other things is that your policies and procedures should support that. And some of that is just by retitling some of your already existing policies. So if you have a PTO policy, categorizing that under the work-life balance part of your handbook, right? Because using words like that signals to your employees, like, we care about your work-life balance. And here are the things that we're specifically doing to think about that. And, policies that can fit under that are, talking about flexible work schedule policies, hybrid workspace policies, PTO policies. All of those policies can fit under that work-life balance category in your policy and procedure manual. And these are just small little tweaks of how we're framing things that we're already doing that can signal to our employees, hey, we care about you. We're thinking about these things and we want you to be thinking about these things. Next is our awareness and signals. So just creating an awareness about mental health, acknowledging like, yeah, we have brains. That means we have mental health. And so what are the things that your organization already offers to support mental health? Maybe you have an EAP, maybe you don't. If you don't, there are lots of statewide programs that you can highlight as resources for your employees, places where they can access low barrier mental health support services or other types of support services. And you want those things really posted in the same place where you put other workplace postings. Where are you putting like your minimum wage things and all of your federal postings, and just putting basic information that you think every employee should know and including some of that. We always say that it's a good idea to do some sort of suicide prevention training. We've done QPR with a lot of the folks in our small business community, and there are lots of different online trainings. There are lots of different accessible things that you can do, or you can even say, hey, go find a training that you're interested in and we'll give you credit for it. Or if you go take an hour to do that, we'll pay you an hour to go take this training because we know that it will ultimately support our culture here at work. Next is, if you have supervisors or individuals who are in charge of overseeing other people's work, really focus on giving them some tools to be coaches. Not everyone that goes into those supervisor roles knows how to do that. So even really easy templates that they could use for what their coaching sessions are going to be, giving them framework for what one-on-one meetings or what supervision looks like in your organization, and really giving them a timeline for what that coaching should look like. There's lots of different trainings out there available, but really putting that, again, in your policy and procedure manuals or somewhere about what's our leadership support? How are we supporting you as a leader in our organization? And understanding and normalizing the fact that not everybody knows how to have those one-on-one conversations with employees that they are supporting. What we do know is someone who doesn't know what they're doing and someone who does that poorly can have a really serious impact on the culture of our workforce and the experience of our employees and their relationship with our organizations. Next is visible postings. So for example, there is the 988 Colorado Mental Health line, and you can go on their website and order free materials just to put something up by wherever your like care nook is, where you're offering snacks or allowing for them to get their food and drink, in the bathrooms, anywhere where you can just normalize the fact that, hey, we know that sometimes resources are needed, and here are all the resources that are available in our community. And it might not even just be things like that, but other wellness things that are happening in the community. If you are paying attention on Facebook or any other LinkedIn, any of those places, people are posting all the time about lots of free kind of self-care wellness activities that just highlighting the availability of them and showing your employees of opportunities they have to get engaged with the community is a nice way to support your employees' wellness. Costs you nothing except for maybe to print something or share something with your employees. Community resource information, just having a little area in your workspace or on your website where employees can see community resources, even if it's just a link like to the Suicide Prevention Collaborative's website, and they have a resource link, or, we've talked about the resources on the Pikes Peak Library District, but just making it easy to find help. That normalizes the idea that people are accessing help, and it reminds folks that help's available. And then policies and procedures that, again, support that stuff. A formal training plan that includes some of those mental health trainings, suicide prevention trainings, or development plans, and training schedules that include some of that coaching or one-on-one communication support, so that we know that we are actively and intentionally building healthy communication within our workplaces. Next is Inquire. And this is just like check in with your people. You should make a habit of it one-on-one. You should make a habit of it in your team meetings. Maybe you don't have a large enough team, but just even sending a text message, putting a reminder in your phone as an organizational leader of like, check in with your team. So on a different day, maybe check in with a different team member, send them something funny on an email or over text. Just maintain that communication and let them know that you're thinking about them as a human. These check-ins shouldn't be related to tasks. It's just a human check-in. Like, how's it going? How are you feeling? How was your kids' recital the other day? How's that, baseball season going? Whatever it is, but connecting on a human level and separating that from performance check-ins or task status check-ins. And then encouraging a culture of see something, say something, right? So if you're noticing that someone doesn't seem like they're doing okay, just, creating a situation where it would be normal for you to comment on that to them in a private and safe way, just like, hey, I noticed today that you don't seem yourself, and I just wanted to check in with you. But if you're doing that as a leader, then it models to them, and then your teammates will start checking in with each other and taking care of each other like that. And then reminding supervisors to get curious first. If you've been through any of our other suicide prevention trainings, we talk about how behavior can often be the language that folks are using when they don't have the language to speak about what's happening with them. So really giving them the standard of, I'm going to get curious about what's happening before I get consequential. Before I get angry or upset, I'm going to pause and ask a curious question first. And then culture. I always, everyone on my team, if they could, do push-ups every time I said the words curiosity and compassion, they would have really buff arms, because reminding ourselves to stay curious and lead with compassion is one of the primary ways that we can create a sense of belonging for people on our team. It's a really effective way of helping folks to feel cared for. And modeling a work-life balance. I don't know how many leaders I see who are just burning themselves at both ends and then telling the people like, oh, you haven't taken any PTO this week, or make sure you're focusing on that work-life balance, while what they're modeling is something else, which also signals what they value. Right. And so even though you're telling me this, I know what you really want me to do is to get my work done at regardless of the cost to me. And that's not the message that you want to signal. You want to really role model work-life balance as you want it to be seen in the culture of your organization. And then having health and wellness just openly discussed. I'll never forget, we were having a suicide prevention collaborative meeting, and I had just started using these estrogen patches for my perimenopause. And when we were doing check-in at the beginning of the meeting, I just mentioned that I was confused about how to use these patches and that it's like a new adventure of being a middle-aged woman. And I think, being able to make light of things and talk out loud about our health is important. And again, it normalizes the topic of wellness and it reduces stigma. And a lot of times that vulnerability needs to start with the leader in the room. And then cultivating connection through activities and a communication plan. I love an organizational newsletter that's like the kind of newsletter that we used to get in middle school. That's like highlighting what someone did during the week as a task. It's something that someone could share with their family to show look, here we are, having an organization, like having a game night at your office or doing a company kickball team or a company softball team, whatever it is, but just spending time building rapport and relationships that are not always work related. I love, there's a beer league volleyball team that happens at that sand place over off Powers. And so many of those Friday night beer league teams are all work teams, people who work together. And I love hearing about that. And those are just really simple ways that you can create connection. And if your organization doesn't have the ability to sponsor a team, that's okay. A lot of those teams are as an individual, not super expensive to join, but just participating, being on the team as the organizational leader and showing up for those kinds of activities can make a huge difference. So those are some just really things within the Get Basic strategy that people can do. Yes, Brandon.
Holy smokes, Cass, that's so much to unpack. And I'm just I'm blown away with some of these tips. I think you have a whole bunch of really great best practices. And, I'm blessed to have come from a corporate background where, I was trained as a leader to do some of these things and how to incorporate this. But I keep thinking about Rain or some of our other entrepreneurs that might watch this webinar later, and how big are our teams and how many employees or contractors or people that support the work that we do, how much influence or how many people do we actually have that dominion over? And so when I think about a small team of maybe 2 or 3, let's just say they're contractors. Let's say you don't even have employees yet, but you're trying to build a culture of connectivity and understanding of each other so that you can support each other, so that even when you as the business owner are dealing with some of these things, your team can say the same thing about you. Like, hey, Brandon, are you okay? You're not quite yourself today. And by me building a culture of trust that people can ask me that question is really important as an entrepreneur. And so I think you have a lot there to unpack, but what I really hope that an entrepreneur takes away from this is you have to be intentional. You can't just run your business and expect your employees to take care of themselves because they're adults. I know we want to think that way, and it's easy to fall in the trap of just saying, well, deal with it. You also need to think about yourself as an entrepreneur who has that stewardship, as somebody who has care of others. And that's where this culture really, really resonates. And even just talking about something as simple as biological needs. If you're watching this webinar and you run a small restaurant or maybe like a little office space with a small team, just being intentional about some of that physical space that people need to have as well. And the last thing I'll comment on this, because you had so much there and it got me thinking about all these different things in my life. I live my life by the FISH philosophy, and you heard that right. It's FISH with an apostrophe, and it's 4 pillars. It's play, make their day, choose your attitude, and being present. And so many things that you just said kind of fit into those 4 pillars of hey, work made fun gets done, and being present helps fight burnout. And, going out of your way to make somebody's day helps create this really great culture. So all of the things in the FISH philosophy really hit home when you're going through this slide. So thank you, Cass.
I think that's such a great point. Even for me, right now, my organization has 2.5 employees on staff, and so things that we do is we have like a touch base meeting every week. And we start that meeting with just like regular run of the business things, right? And then we do personal check-ins. And that's where, we get to talk about things. I kind of keep track of what our common interests are. And so while we don't have a huge budget for things, I kind of know what some of their favorite things are. So every once in a while, I'll bring a breakfast burrito, or, once a quarter, I try to get us together to do an activity together. Last week, we went skeet shooting with Lee Lemkel from the Suicide Prevention Collaborative, but he did a little like firearm safety course with us. And then we got to try and practice how to skeet shoot, which was something that none of us had tried, but we were all interested in. So it was a fun experience. And it's just things like that every once in a while. Or sometimes I'll shoot just like an email of like, hey, I saw this thing happening in the community. If any of you have time this weekend, it looks like something that, based on what I know about you, you would enjoy. And it just seems like, just knowing, just paying attention and knowing. Those personal check-ins help us to know what's happening with each other's lives. And then that gives me, stuff to be able to check in with them individually later on. And so it doesn't have to be a lot, but it has to be intentional, like you're mentioning.
Yeah, I think another good point to that is, we start with one employee or one contractor, and then you grow because you got another job, and now you've got 5 people on your team. And one of the things that's easy to do is to be so focused on the work of generating revenue for your business that you forgot that the people are what's really powering that. And this is where, and you started this webinar kind of addressing this, but when you lose sight of the people and the talent that are help driving that, that's where your burnout and that's where your stress levels can start to increase exponentially. So we're not talking about this topic from the standpoint of a nice to have. If you have employees or you have contractors that help you in daily work, this is a have to have. You cannot sustain a long-term business without this kind of intentional culture embedded into the work that you do. So this is a message to all of our entrepreneurs who never had that corporate training and never really understood, like, hey, I got out of high school, I started, doing General Electric, and I started a business, and I'm running a 30, person operation. This is a good opportunity, if you're hearing this, to stop and embed some of these into your business.
Mm-hmm. I love too, you mentioned one thing, Brandon, that stood out to me, and everything that Cass said as well, about how when you role model it, that makes it space for your employees to check on you or your contractors to check on you as a business owner. So it kind of goes full circle. And that is an important, like, first step as the founder of a business before you even have employees, is remembering yourself, that you need all of these things, that you need connection, that you need some basic human needs met, and to take care of yourself. How many solo entrepreneurs sit at their desk all day and forget to stop and have lunch or go to the bathroom even? Like, we're just going meeting to meeting to meeting. Okay, it's pointing at self. Yes, see, so these are all great reminders that this is basic, because every human needs this. And as we do it for ourselves as business owners, we role model it, and we create that trickle down effect, because it could come back to us and through the community. I even think about the solo entrepreneurs, attending and listening, who don't have employees at all yet and need community. Like, find those places where you can get community, things like SBDC and chamber networking events. And I'm part of several different collaboratives that I attend either weekly or monthly with other solo entrepreneurs. So I feel seen and have a safe space to, someone can check up on me or knows how I'm doing from week to week. Just prioritizing our humanity in general is a critical element as a small business owner, for sure.
I love that. I think that's great. I think, I think of a lot of the folks who not only are entrepreneurs, but are working from home.
Yeah.
And so, they could go entire days, like days in a row, without having to talk to another human outside of, in real life. And I just think, like you're saying, connection is so important, and finding ways to connect with others, and especially with folks who have a shared experience with you. It's really nice. I know for me, like, especially last year when there was a lot going on with federal funding, being able to sit down with other nonprofit organizations and just know, like, man, we're not the only ones that are scared and stressed right now or dealing with this hardship. And then hearing the strategies that folks were using, I mean, that was so helpful just to name it and be able to say it out loud to other folks who are like, yeah, times are tough right now. And just that sense of not being alone can be so important.
So true.
So the next thing is that a lot of small businesses don't have built-in mental health supports like EAP or anything like that. And so a really amazing resource that is, nationally available is 988. And what's great about that is that you can text or call, and you don't have to be in crisis. It doesn't have to be an emergency. You can just use it as a starting point for getting to know the resources in your community. And it's really nice because, like, someone is there talking you through it. And so you don't have to figure it out on your own, because a lot of times, I don't know, like anytime I'm trying to like choose a dentist or a chiropractor, I'm like, I don't know what I need, or I don't know where to start. And so 988 is a really great resource to talk to someone who's been trained, who is aware of the resources that are available, and can just walk you through that. And if you are, an employer who's sitting with an employee, you can give that to them right away. And that's something that they can access anytime. It doesn't cost you any money. And like I said, you can go on 988's website and order postings or little cards, inserts into for your, policy and procedure manuals, or if you have, safety workbooks or folders in different places, you can put it in there. But it's just a really good resource to help folks connect. And 988 is also going to be able to connect them to those low barrier resources, which are often no or low cost to access mental health services. And I just think that's really important, because one of the things that I always hear people say is like, I can't afford that. Like, I can't even afford to go get my teeth cleaned, so I'm not gonna be able to afford to talk to a therapist. And the other thing is that 988 can also, if someone's like, I'm not a therapy person, they're aware of other community-based resources that are not necessarily therapy, but are supportive for our mental health and well-being.
Yeah.
And that's really all I have for today. That's the presentation.
Can I just say, the more employees and the more contracts and jobs that you're taking on, the more important it will be to have resources around you. And to your point, we often look as entrepreneurs at our balance sheet and go, what can we afford? What's possible? And I do like that 988 is going to offer some resources and options for you as you're scaling up your business. And so taking advantage of some of these things that either the state or some of your local reps might provide, or local municipalities and communities might provide, rather. That's really, really important, because I think oftentimes as an entrepreneur, you feel isolated and alone in this journey, and you don't feel like, if you're going to provide services like medical benefits to your team, then you have to figure that out on your own. And that's not necessarily the case. And so I would encourage folks to think that through, be very intentional about your services. And then, as Rebecca mentioned, taking care of yourself. I mean, I'm guilty as charged. Rebecca knows this. I burn fast and hard and go 1,000 miles a day. But I do make sure that I'm eating lunch and that I'm taking moments to breathe. And I have my own techniques and my own things that I've picked up along the way, but it helps me stay resilient and stay present for my team. And so this is an important topic as you're scaling and growing your business, because the moment that payroll is this Friday, and the moment that your accounts receivable didn't come through, Cass, you again talked about this at the beginning, that financial burden can really weigh on somebody. And so we really want our entrepreneurs to be well taken care of here. So thank you for these tips.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it so much. I'm going to just share one closing slide myself. So I'll just take over sharing, and then we can always wrap up early unless someone has more comments or questions. It's always good to have a little bit more time back in your day. We schedule these for an hour, but we don't have to take a full hour to the minute. We can take some time to go outside and take a walk or take some fresh air too. But these are the upcoming topics for the rest of the series this year. We don't do November, December because of the holidays. So there's really only 3 months left, which is shocking in a lot of ways, in our Wellbeing Wednesday series. Next month, we're going to be super excited to have Nicole Weiss from UCCS Lyda Hill Institute for Human Resilience speaking on the important topic of burnout. And again, we were sort of just talking about the thread through this today was self-preservation. How do you take care of yourself as a leader so that you don't burn out? So that you can then take care of your team. So I think that's going to be a fantastic presentation. They have so many good resources there at UCCS, and we love partnering with them here at the SBDC. And then a friend of mine in the local community, Sarah Miley, who's a trauma coach, is going to be speaking in September on capacity building, which is really about recognizing, this has become one of my favorite topics, understanding what nervous system regulation actually means as a business owner. Like your nervous system is what's driving the train all the time. And when you're dysregulated and triggered or in a space where you're not thinking clearly or not making decisions well, or you're reactive instead of thoughtful and compassionate and curious, like those words Cass used, how do you recognize that and then move into that state where you can be more present as a leader, for your customers, for your employees, for all of it? And so I'm excited to talk about that aspect of nervous system regulation. And then I'll be wrapping up the year actually with talking about why, and we've kind of been touching on this the whole entire time, but why does well-being matter from a social impact perspective? Like this is the trickle down effect that I talk about a lot. Like how do you really prioritize our humanity in a way that then impacts everybody around you? And so we'll be talking about why that's important and how to do that as an organization. I have a framework that I'll introduce around how do I build a workplace that prioritizes humans, and then how we then trickle that down to the rest of our community. So those are the upcoming events. Scan here if you want to go to the training website for SBDC to register, and tell your friends. We get 10 or 20 people register every month, but I know people get busy, but these are here and they're free. And then like Brandon said at the very beginning, they also offer these are weekly series for business builders. So once a month it's on you and your humans at work. But the other weeks are very practical, important tips on AI and on finance and on marketing and customer service. And there's great topics every week. So check out and tell your friends who are in business about this great SBDC resources that we offer. And I think with that, I will sign off. Rain, so great to see you again, and
Thank
great to
you.
see everybody online. Have a great week.
Have a good
Stay
rest of
cool
your
out
week.
there.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for your time. I really appreciate the presentation.
We appreciate you.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
have a
Rain.
great day.